Coming up, even some Tories are saying that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has no mandate and that a general election, although not constitutionally required, would be the moral thing to do. But others are saying, give the guy a chance. Well, in this video, I'll be looking at why the out-of-touch, ultra-rich Sunak is totally unsuitable for the highest office in the land. Stay tuned. If you enjoy watching the Truth to Power channel, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help me out by hitting the like button and especially by sharing a link to this video on your social media platforms. As someone who wants to see the Tories out of power forever, during the shambolic Johnson government, it was Rishi Sunak who, for a while at least, most concerned me as being a leader who could steer the Tories back into power at the next election. Despite the fact that he lives in a different world to 99.9% of the electorate, having married into the billionaire family of Narayana Murthy, the co-founder of IT company Infosys and the 6th richest man in India. But the more I've seen and heard of Sunak, I've grown ever more confident that his Tory government will still be heavily defeated at the next election. The Telegraph this week reported polling that predicts a 3-figure majority for Labour over the Sunak-led Tories. While more popular than Boris Johnson among non-Tory voters, Sunak trails him quite heavily among those who voted Conservative in 2019, and many of them are not expected to vote for the Tories again under Sunak. Particularly because Conservative voters blame him for the growth in taxation and massive government spending in the wake of the COVID pandemic. There are others who won't vote for him because he was the first Chancellor in history to have been found to have broken criminal law when he was issued a fixed penalty notice by the Metropolitan Police for attending a Downing Street party that wasn't a party during the COVID lockdown. There was also the debacle only 6 months ago when Rishi Sunak was embroiled in a row over his wife's non-dom status, which saved the couple millions of pounds in tax that would otherwise have been payable in the UK, alongside the revelation that Sunak himself had held a green card, granting him residency in the USA even while holding the second highest office in the land in the UK. The Tory-friendly Lord Geidt, the government's ethics advisor at the time, ruled that this did not breach the ministerial code of conduct, allowing Sunak narrowly to survive in office. And on top of all that, Tory voters blame Sunak for his role in the downfall of Boris Johnson in July. Listening to Conservative Party member Jerry, who called into Sangeeta Maiska's LBC show last weekend, there are also a lot of Tory party members that won't vote for Sunak in a general election because his skin is too brown. But it's not just the electorate that Rishi Sunak may have a problem with. So splintered and tribal is the Conservative Party right now that many on the right of the party will simply refuse to back Sunak and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt on tax. And the One Nation wing of the party will rebel against cuts to public services. The markets will stop them turning to borrowing. So the Sunak administration, even with its Commons majority of around 70, will struggle to get budgets passed and cuts implemented. It could remain quite chaotic for a long while to come. The antipathy towards Sunak runs deep even in his own ranks. If he can pull off the usual Tory trick of persuading an uninformed electorate to accept sacrifices, he'll find opposition from within his own parliamentary party just because it's him who's asking for them. I'll admit, Rishi Sunak appears to be more intelligent and competent than either Johnson or Truss, which is a very low bar, granted, but he lacks Johnson's ability to get across simplistic ideas that so appeal to the average Tory MP and to their right-wing voters. You know, like get Brexit done or levelling up. That's not really on brand for Sunak. And that's maybe one reason why, although he used to be a relatively popular figure in this Brexit government, according to YouGov, the historical trend is very much against him. His net approval rating with the electorate at large has been cut from around plus 43% to minus 26% now. That's one hell of a shift. And the reasons behind this shift are the same reasons why this man is totally unsuited as our new Prime Minister. This is a man very much of the 1% richest in our society and for the 1% richest in our society to the detriment of the 99%, including you and me.
I have friends who are aristocrats, I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, working class, but I'm not working class.
It was him that originally came up with the idea of the 1.25% hike in national insurance that hits lower earners proportionately harder than higher earners. National insurance is one of the strangest taxes in existence. It's regressive, with the current highest rate of 12% contributions on income of up to £967 a week, which then falls currently to 2% for income above that level. This idea of a falling tax rate as you go up the earning scale is, to me, morally indefensible. National insurance contributions are basically income tax by any other name, and Sunak used the subterfuge of it somehow being seen as different to straight income tax to hike these rates that disproportionately affect lower earners. He's like the opposite of Robin Hood in that he's robbing the poor to pay the rich. And get this, capital gains, in other words unearned income for taxpayers in the UK, trebled to £63 billion per year in the 8 years up to the pandemic, and then during the pandemic that rate of increase multiplied exponentially. As a result, the government's Office for Tax Simplification reported recently that the Treasury would gain £14 billion a year from raising capital gains tax from the current rate of 20% to 25%. But Sunak has quashed that idea straight away, preferring to raise national insurance from every employee rather than do anything at all about unearned, undertaxed capital gains wealth. Even ex-Tory Chancellor and famous Brexiteer now living in France, Nigel Lawson, once declared in Parliament that there is little economic difference between income and capital gains. So why should earned income be taxed at higher rates than unearned income? Nigel Lawson, as Tory Chancellor, equalised the tax on unearned and earned income. So in 1988, it seems that Tory levelling up actually happened to a certain extent. But under Rishi Sunak as Chancellor, the opposite happened. And there's no reason to suspect that he will do a U-turn and start closing the gap between rich and poor anytime soon. That 45p top rate tax cut may well come back under his premiership just as soon as the markets have calmed a bit. He's even apparently looking at plans to cut inheritance tax. I just don't get it with inheritance tax. Personally, I'd much rather pay my taxes after I'm dead rather than when I'm alive. But of course, the very nature of heredity and inheritance conserves the social classes, and this construct is at the very core of conservatism. The rich families must stay rich, and the poor must stay poor. Prevent the oiks catching up and crush social mobility by ensuring that kids whose luck sees them coming out of a wealthy fanny will inherit all the advantages of wealth without ever having to earn it. As Chancellor, Fishy Rishi used to come out with sound bites about rewarding hard work, while at the same time increasing the tax burden on workers while planning cuts to inheritance tax and capital gains tax. It's a contradiction, and every tax cut he makes means less spending on the NHS, social care, and infrastructure such as road, rail, sewage, water, fibre optic broadband, and the massive workforce retraining required in post-Brexit Britain. I could go on, and in fact I will. What about the move to green energy production? What about the levelling up promises to the north of England? What about the investment in a charging infrastructure for electric vehicles? Those net zero carbon targets ain't never going to be met without investment. And the delay in restoring Britain's overseas aid budget to 0.7% of GDP until 2024 is just completely shameful. Rishi Sunak is the worst type of small government Tory, deliberately increasing tax injustice and following Thatcher's mantra that there is no such thing as society, and thus no need for a strong interventionist government regulating the economy and providing a basic safety net for employment rights, people's financial welfare, health and social care, all alongside a functioning infrastructure that gives everyone access to a good quality of life. Don't expect any of that under this Rishi Sunak Prime Ministership.